I wanted to come up with a name that really embodied this vision of being disciplined and detailed and metrics driven. And I built this landing page, basically a pretty simple website. I ran Google AdWords for Amazon repricing software. That night, I got a lead, and immediately the first ever lead became a customer. It was literally the first ever person that responded to an ad from Teikametrics became a customer immediately.
Wow.
And, the rest is history.
Welcome to the very first episode of Human in the Loop. My name is Cameron Yoder, and I will be your host throughout the entirety of this show, and dare I say, this experience. Whether you're watching this on video or listening to it in audio, I'm so glad that you're here. We have a lot in store for you throughout the entirety of the show. First question, of course, is going to be, what in the world is a human in the loop, and why is this show called that? What are we talking about here? It's a really good question. A human in the loop is a person that is leveraging a machine or technology to achieve a result far greater than either could on their own. So a human in the loop is basically someone that is leveraging cutting-edge technology, okay? And this show encompasses that very theme. It encompasses the idea, the theme of this interesting interaction that's going on in today's e-commerce world specifically, where human is leveraging machine technology to achieve insane results that neither could achieve on their own. And I intend to explore that theme in a number of different ways and with a number of different stories. I've been in e-commerce for, I think, close to 15 years now, and we are truly at a turning point in the industry now where technology is changing and growing at a rapid pace. And you as a human being, as a person, need to understand what's happening and what's changing in the world today to stay ahead of this technology to continue growing. And so my goal on this show is to help pull out stories, experiences, and strategy that you've never seen before in an e-commerce podcast. There are other e-commerce podcasts that are out there, yes, but my goal is to find people that you've never heard before in an e-com podcast, and also to host conversations that someone who's been selling for 20 years in e-com or someone who doesn't sell at all will enjoy seeing. And so we'll explore everything from artificial intelligence in e-commerce, TikTok, data analysis, while also exploring stories behind sellers that are crushing it today using cutting-edge technology and or the most modern-day strategies. Like you'll see in the first 10 episodes specifically, a number of sellers that started on TikTok that are crushing it. And so I intend to pull out these strategies and these stories and hopefully help you learn something along the way, all while enjoying yourself in this crazy, crazy podcast show called Human in the Loop. This very first episode specifically is with Mclean-Foreman, who is the CEO and founder of Teikametrics, which is one of the most cutting-edge technology SaaS companies in e-commerce today, specifically focused on advertising. But this episode specifically, I wanted to pull out more of Alistair's story, because Alistair has a really interesting story as one of the very first sellers on Amazon, leading all the way up to starting his own software company, Teikametrics, and becoming the CEO of this incredible, very large software company. What does this story look like from one of the first Amazon sellers ever to successful seller software CEO and founder? And believe it or not, Alistair was actually selling products online before Amazon was a thing, and had a conversation with one of the first Amazon, what did Alistair say? One of the first people basically that built Amazon, specifically Amazon ads, and that guy that he met with, he tells a story about this, but that guy he was talking with bought donuts for the very first 6 Amazon sellers ever. I don't want to spoil the episode too much, but this is a really interesting conversation with one of the first ever Amazon sellers, making his way up all the way to software CEO. So there's a lot to cover. I'm looking forward to the many episodes to come, but on this first episode, let's see what Alistair has to say and enjoy the very first episode of Human in the Loop. All right, everyone, I'm here with Alistair, the founder and current CEO of Teikametrics, and the goal of this episode is to really pull out Alistair's story. The title explains it all. from third-party seller to software CEO. There's a really interesting story there, and what a journey it is and what a journey it's been. So, Alistair, thank you for being here. Uh, you are the current founder and CEO of Teikametrics, and not many people know this, but were one of the first third-party sellers on Amazon. That's a really interesting story, and we'll get to where things are now because there's a lot of things that's happened. But my goal, my hope with this is to really pull out what that transition looks like, because there are a lot of people out there that are current sellers that aspire to be something like the founder of a software company or are on that path right now. So let's start at the beginning. Let's start all the way at the front of this. Where does this story start? What led you to even start considering selling on Amazon?
Well, thanks, Cameron. And wow, I'm going to age myself with this. It's a long time. And genuinely, we're talking about 20 years ago, 2 decades ago. I was in my dorm room in college and I'd come over from the UK. And genuinely, I was selling products to pay for school. And I got an email, I think it was an email, from Amazon, who was at the time a book website. And they said, hey, we've done a project with Toys R Us. We're selling other products outside of books. You've got some interesting stuff. We would love for you to be part of this new marketplace. And I said, well, that doesn't sound great because you're a book website. So that's how long ago we're talking.
Well, do you still have that email? Did you take a screenshot of that?
I don't have the email, but I have a fax, which I've kept onto a screenshot of a fax. And it was from a Amazon subsidiary I think it was in Nevada. And it was really Amazon doing what it really always does, which is test out, innovate, and try new things. And the marketplace was basically an early bet. And here we are today with $500 billion going through the marketplace. You know, the vast majority of US e-commerce going through the marketplace. And I was very, very fortunate, very lucky to be one of those first third-party sellers back in 2003.
So does this mean you mentioned that at the time it had just been a book selling website? Does that mean at that time you were selling books, textbooks, maybe any kind of book to pay for college? Like what did that look like?
No, actually, you know, I was selling a different product. I at the time actually came over to the US to study. I was the captain of the Harvard track team, but I wasn't the captain at the time because I was in my sophomore year, and I was really focused on sports and running. I'd run for the Great Britain athletics team in the 800 meters, and that's what led me to the US to study and do sports, which is actually something that's so amazing about this country. And I found out that there's a lot to pay for, even if you're living on in a dorm, and you know there's a lot to pay for.
Yeah.
So I actually ended up selling. Well, the full story is I had a watch that was given to me by the British Olympic training team.
Whoa.
And the watch broke, and I called up the 1-800 number, and on the on the auto attendant, it was literally one of those sort of automated messages which said, hey, press 1 for a consumer, press 2 for a dealer. And really, I didn't have anything to lose. So I said, press 2 for a dealer, and said, what does it take to become a dealer of these products? And, you know, they said you needed to buy X number of products. And I actually, I might get in trouble by saying this. And, you know, I actually borrowed money from the university to buy a laptop. And because they had a student loan program, and I took that money. I didn't buy a laptop. I bought a load of watches.
Wow.
I built a .com website, and that .com website actually got indexed in Google. And this was before Google ads were really a thing. Certainly before Google Shopping was a thing. And really, that website became really well indexed. So I was making money online selling these watches that I really enjoyed, and it was pretty cool as a young kid, basically getting all of the cool gadgets that you wanted and making money from them.
Well,
And I actually ended up building, a pretty successful website. And that was actually in 2001, 2002. And we then sort of added meaning me, added more and more products very profitably. And I think what Amazon was doing, they had gone through, obviously the books being the starting point, but then they had various different efforts. At the time, there was a sort of a system called Z Shops. So at that time, there was Yahoo Shopping and Z Shops. There was no Shopify.
Wow.
And of course, and basically, you would either go onto a .com website to sell your products. You could use eBay, and I did some of that. But there really wasn't this idea of a marketplace, right? So I think what Amazon had tried to do and false started a few times is do something like Z Shops, and it was a bit clunky, a little bit like Yahoo Shopping. And then they really went for this big marketplace idea. And I think what they had was a group of folks, probably inside of Amazon, looking for all of the different niche categories. And they came across heart rate monitor watches and Timex GPS speed and distance watches that were really fast growing as a category. And then they found my little website and they reached out and said, hey, why don't you sell your products on our new marketplace model?
So then you brought your products onto Amazon? Did you transition over to, was it Amazon then?
Honestly, I mean, this is what's so funny about this. I actually was like, well, no, it just sounds like a terrible deal, paying you 15% to list the products on Amazon.
Yep.
And that's what's so interesting about this journey I've been on, because today the blended amounts, when you combine ads, FBA fees, commission fees, is around 53%.
Crazy.
So over that sort of 20-year span, Amazon has really taken a huge amount of the margin, taken a huge amount of the transaction. So when I first started, it was 15%. And I was like, why would I do that? What was happening to me is very, very profitable. It was all through organic Google search. And really, there was no Google ads at that time either. So it was just a very, very exciting time for me. I made friends with the dorm room mail clerk, and all of these boxes would arrive, and I would literally, was supposed to be studying, but what I was doing is, printing out these shipping labels and then walking down to the post office and shipping them in USPS priority mailers. Wow. And so there was no overhead cost, no customer acquisition cost. I really confused the brands, actually, because I would just call them up and they would appear at the dorm. I remember meeting, folks from like Oakley sunglasses. I basically went through every product that I wanted. I wanted a pair of Oakley sunglasses, so I went and did the same thing, called up Oakley and said, hey, I want to sell your products. They said, well, where are you? I gave them the address, and the national sales manager showed up at my dorm.
Wait, did they show up because, was it because of the amount of traffic that you had on your website, or that was just simply how it worked at the time? You said, I want to sell your stuff.
Well, it's really interesting. Yeah, it's a great question. It's really interesting because I think and it's still here today, right? There's this question of channels, right? If you're a brand, where should you sell? Should you sell on Amazon? How do you sell online? What's your brick and mortar strategy? And I think it's amazing to see these challenges still as we do today at Teikametrics. We listen to a lot of these challenges, which channels. We've just added the CEO of Solo Stove as an example to our board. And if you listen to the earnings calls for Solo Stove, and John Merris is the CEO, a lot of what he's talking about is the channels, right? Costco, Dick's Sporting Goods, Amazon, Walmart, and obviously we're partnering with them to scale on those marketplaces, Amazon and Walmart. But if you go back in time to me sitting in my dorm room, similar. And what I was really able to do, which is somewhat of just capturing a small window of time, is to actually reach out to these brands and say, hey, I just want to buy your products at wholesale. And really, they were very confused because online at that time, I mean, we're talking 2001 at this point,
Really? Yep.
was really not part of their playbook. So I was able to ask them some pretty direct questions. I sort of said, well, I want to buy your products. They would sometimes ask, well, you have to have a brick and mortar retail store. And some didn't ask that question. And those that didn't ask that question, I just bought the product. So I was basically getting really early on around this leaner business model. But the folks I was talking to on the brand side, they were used to talking to brick and mortar stores.
Yep. Oh, I'm sure very few people were doing what you were doing. That's so, out of all the people that have sold on Amazon and done e-commerce, I truly think this is one of the, if not the earliest beginnings in e-commerce.
I think there's, what I actually just want to make an important point here. When I talk to our brands at Teikametrics, I'm much more impressed with what they've done versus what I did. And the main piece is we're talking and helping brands today at Teikametrics that are the brand owners.
Yeah.
What I was doing was not what we now call retail arbitrage. It was more about reselling branded products.
Yep.
And, of course, if you have the ability to get really, really good products with a lot of IP, let's call it Oakley sunglasses as an example, and you are really the only seller on Amazon, you've got a really good position. And that's where things have changed over those 20 years. What's happened now is, of course, brands are transacting directly. And actually, that is my journey. Instead of being the reseller, I'm really helping the brands, or we as a company are helping the brands directly. But there's some interesting dynamics. Those questions are around retail channels. I remember one as an example. One of the brands, and actually I think it was Oakley that was one of these brands, said, well, you have to have a physical retail store. If there's no way that we can sell you these products without authorization. And literally, as a college kid, I went and looked and rented a retail store that I could cycle to. So I would, again, supposed to be studying and working out for the track team, but I somehow was able to sort of fit this in. And I rented a retail store, and then I called up the national sales manager again, and she actually came to that retail store and was probably even more confused. But we were sitting there in this tiny little retail store, and I said, look, you told me I had to have a retail store. You have to have brick and mortar. And I was able to get that contract. And actually, what was cool about that is they invited me to the Oakley headquarters, and I made a case of why, I was going to add value building a website.
Oh, absolutely.
And and then, that gave us gave me a big advantage to sell those products. So, that's what I ended up doing.
Yeah.
And it's a different world now. Because brands
it is, but the interesting thing is that there are still a lot of similarities that carry over into today. The logistics of everything and probably some red tape between getting started and doing that is probably different, but there are, I'm guessing, a lot of similarities that people start, especially when they're starting out with experience today. And I'm curious to unpack that. I kind of want to transition over to like what the beginning of heading into the software aspect of this story comes in, Teikametrics, right? So what did that transition look like? When did Teikametrics start coming into the picture?
Right. And I think, what was born out of that and really the challenge of figuring out Amazon, even in the early stages, really created this need that as a company today, that's our obsession. Our customer is the brand or the seller, right? Basically, the brand or the seller. Whereas Amazon's focus is the consumer. Lowest prices, maximum convenience and selection. Those are the three things that really define who Amazon is. And they're an amazing company, an incredible company, if not the world's most customer-centric company. And they've done extremely well around that. But if you are a seller or a brand, from the very beginning, it's challenging.
Yep.
And, whether that's the initial setup in 2003, how do you get your listings on? How do you, the amount of times I've was suspended from selling on Amazon due to, not meeting the right criteria in terms of response times, false positives for getting your listings taken down, 3 days before Black Friday, and all of the pain. That challenge still exists for the largest brands on Amazon, the largest brands on also Amazon and Walmart, or TikTok shops, or whatever the new channel is. So what the initial journey for Teikametrics started when I experienced challenges interfacing with a third-party seller situation on Amazon. And really, the journey was pretty arduous. I actually slept in my office for a couple of years because I had acquired too much inventory. I was very profitable, as I mentioned, in college in the early days, because I had no overhead costs and no advertising costs, and it was just sort of very, very rapid. In fact, I made some really embarrassing mistakes, which I think also have created some really important, passionate meaning around Teikametrics. And I would actually go around, in my mind, thinking I was making $1 million a year, looking at that top line number that shows up in the Amazon Seller Central interface.
So that was the number. That was the number that was on the dashboard. Was like $1 million.
Well, yeah, and
Or
I was able to scale, far beyond that. But there's a huge difference. $1 million in sales on Amazon or any platform, it doesn't mean anything. It's all about what is your gross margin. And if you think about all of the components and all of the sort of the components that impact your profitability, that's really what built the first ideas around Teikametrics. So to go into the actual story of transitioning to a software company, I was fortunate enough, after all the ups and downs, going very profitable in the early stages, overextending myself, renting an even bigger retail space, so big that I actually had to sleep in it for 2 years after graduating, and actually accumulating a ton of inventory. I was actually fortunate enough to sell the business. And, I thought to myself, well, I initially focused on sporting goods because I had a passion there. Why don't I just start selling loads of different categories on Amazon? So I started to screen scrape. This was in about 2010.
Okay.
And start to screen scrape all of the different categories, start to model out what would be the most attractive categories. In a way, it was probably a strategy similar to what has built the Jungle Scout business or the Helium 10 business. That early concept.
When you say screen scrape, what does that mean? Like just going through category by category, page by page?
With software. And if you think about, I'm sure a lot of Amazon sellers are very familiar with, or any brands are familiar with the tools Jungle Scout and Helium 10 and market research type tools. So I was doing something pretty similar to that early on, and started to build tools around that. And then also building repricing tools around pricing optimization, and then FBA inventory management. And it wasn't until, so I basically was able to go very quickly and start a new company that was much more tech oriented.
Yeah. And were you creating these solutions for yourself, like for that business side of things, where you created them for yourself initially?
Yes, that's right. Okay. I did. And I ended up, it was actually really genuinely kind of a quick story, in the sense that I was at a friend's party in New York City, and my friend's brother came over to me and said, "Hey, what are you up to?" And I said, "Well, I'm still selling products online." And I started telling him about what advantage we had around the software. And he said to me, "Well, I think that software idea is actually more valuable than selling the products." And I actually took a bus back from New York City. At the time, there was I think it was $9. You could get a bus from New York City back to Boston.
Wow.
I was with my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife. And I created a website on the bus, using the Wi-Fi on the bus, And I was thinking of what do I call this business? And I studied econometrics in school, and I visited Japan a couple of times. So Teika is the Japanese word for market price, or literally means decide value. I wanted to come up with a name that really embodied this vision of being disciplined and detailed and metrics driven. And I built this landing page, basically a pretty simple website. I ran Google AdWords for Amazon repricing software. That night, I got a lead,
Wow.
and immediately the first ever lead became a customer.
Wow.
And that's not an exaggeration. It wasn't like there were a number of people that came in, and I went through a sales call or whatever. It was literally the first ever person that responded to an ad from Teikametrics became a customer immediately.
Wow.
And we ended up saying, you send us a feed of your products through CS as a file, and we'll send you back a CSV of the optimizations.
Whoa.
I worked with one of the folks that was helping build the technology with me, and we actually designed an interface, and we actually, instead of providing the CSV, we just said, here, you can log in. And that became the first Teikametrics product. And, the rest is history. We've got thousands of customers since that day. And really, that's the journey. That's the start of the software business that is Teikametrics today.
So what was so that was the concept obviously was proven very, very quickly, right? And then, like you said, from there, things just escalated into, okay, what problems do sellers have? How do we solve those? Software is a way to scale.
Yeah, I think,
Go
just from a software startup perspective, I think one of the most key concepts is product market fit. And Mark Andreessen, founder of Andreessen Horowitz, he's considered one of the most sort of pioneering VC investors. And there's a famous paper that he wrote and published around product market fit being the most important thing. And I truly believe that when you're looking at investing in companies or looking at startup stories, it's really, really hard to create product market fit. You can have an amazing team, and if you don't have product market fit, it will fail. You can have a pretty average team or a bad team, or be like me, just, pretty scrappy and pretty bad at a lot of things. But because we had product market fit, or I had product market fit in day one, which was solving my own problem as an early Amazon seller, that's what gave us that little sort of glowing ember. And really, the journey for Teikametrics has been very lucky, because it just turns out that there are millions of other people who've got that problem, and Amazon did pan out to be much more than a book website.
Yeah.
And we've just been sort of riding that wave, and that's where luck's involved. I was just lucky to get there, have product market fit due to my own pain, and then offer that to someone else.
Was there, so obviously this part of the story starts like the scale up to today, where Teikametrics has become a large company with so many customers, solving the pain of these customers being a core part of this. You see the dots. Like, it's easy to see the dots connected from the very beginning of your story as a seller yourself. Was there ever, transitioning into like the mode in this period of time now, was there ever a moment in time for Teikametrics? Was there ever a turning point where things really started to scale and escalate very quickly? Or has it always kind of been a gradual increase up? What would you say?
Yeah, no, well, yeah, it's a great question. I think what was interesting, if you think about how it was incubated, the business model that I had was around reselling branded goods. And at the time, and the first customers were actually around repricing, because in that world, in that business model for reselling, you weren't the exclusive seller of the given product. And really, the Amazon selling game, so to speak, was really around repricing, and Teikametrics was one of the first repricing companies. Not many people know that because of how we're more positioned as ads today. We also then started to offer inventory optimization, because that was the other thing that kept me up at night, which led me to be sleeping in the office because I bought too much inventory. So I think what was important, relating to your question, is in the early days, we were really catering to and actually doing quite well with no funding very early on as a side project to the business that I had. The biggest sort of real step function was around the decision to evolve to cater to brands. And I think for me, thinking through the journey that is e-commerce, what I was doing early on in college was an opportunity to really capture a window of time, literally as a college kid, call up Oakley sunglasses, make some money. And that's why I have so much respect for our customers today and what we do right now, because we're talking and working as Teikametrics today with brands.
Yep.
The brands directly. So the biggest shift was that ability to pivot Teikametrics into a company that caters to brands. And this is where luck comes in again. So in 2017, and this is actually another sort of interesting history thing for me, at least, I had never actually met any Amazon employee in person.
Oh, wow.
And all of my interactions with Amazon to that point were mainly through customer support and dealing with A to Z claims, suspensions, and really, all through phone. But I was able to get a meeting at Amazon with Paul Kotis, and Paul actually joined Amazon in 1996 as one of the very early key people at Amazon. He's still there on the S team, formerly reporting to Jeff Bezos. So we're talking about one of the very first leaders at Amazon, working with Jeff Bezos, really as the pioneering sort of leadership team in Amazon. And it was a pretty incredible time for me, and something that I look back in my career as an exciting moment. So I went to Seattle for the first time, had a coffee with Paul Kotis in Starbucks. And wow. Paul told me about buying donuts for the first 6 sellers on Amazon. And that would have been in sort of 2000, right before the marketplace got going. And I told him about my story. And he, at the time I met Paul, he, and still is, the head of the advertising team. And really the guy that started the $50 billion business roughly that Amazon Ads is today. And I was able to go upstairs in the Doppler building after having coffee with Paul, and I was able to talk to the Amazon Ads team. And Teikametrics was one of the first partners for the Amazon Ads API.
Yep.
And that's what really kickstarted us. And when you think about who Teikametrics is today, and you Google us and you think about what we are, I think there's obviously a lot of inertia around the ads piece. So as Amazon went from 0 to 50 billion, we've grown, to who we are today. And that was one of the big tipping points for us to really get a chance to work with that new API. And very, very lucky to have been able to do that.
Wow. That was Teikametrics doing advertising at that time when you met with him?
Well, no one was doing advertising.
Oh, okay. Okay, no one was. Okay.
No one was doing advertising, and Amazon had been doing some ads that were actually going off-site. There was nothing to do with sponsored products. They were running display ads. In fact, there was some interesting ads that were there at the time where Amazon was actually selling space to allow people to go off-site.
Oh, wow.
So the whole Amazon ads concept that we see today was just, nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
So it was a really big bet. It was not intuitive or clear at all that it was going to be a good bet. So we actually had to build an entirely new app. We called it Sponsored Products Optimizer, or SP Optimizer. We built the app really quickly, and we just went out there and really didn't know what we were doing. And we just started offering optimization for your Amazon ads in a very, very scrappy way.
Wow.
And that product just accelerated extremely quickly.
Wow.
And that's who we are today.
So that leads up, that is the start. That's the origination of what we are seeing today with Teikametrics. And where does AI come into this piece? Because AI is a core part of Teikametrics today. And there, I feel like there's a sliver in this story from that turning point up to now where AI has been introduced, and has become a very core part. Where does that come into play?
Yeah, and I think that's great that you're asking that question, because that was also one of the step functions. So the repricing optimization, was pretty basic and rules based, and then the inventory optimization tool that we called FBA Insight was really more around the analytics, more around solving the problem of how much inventory do I have at FBA. If I buy too much, I've got stale inventory and it's costing me money and it's keeping me up at night. Or if I buy too little, I'm stocking out and I'm losing opportunity. So it was very, very valuable and was successful in a small way. But really, it wasn't this idea of automation and constantly improving your business. So when we released Sponsored Product Optimizer, it was Teikametrics really jumping into machine learning and automation. At that time, and we're talking 2018 now, that really wasn't the AI wave. And, of course, in 2023, where we are now in December, AI is just absolutely exploded globally in 2023. So it was Teikametrics being a pioneer in applied AI at a time before the big AI wave. And I think, there's a lot of genuine pride for me that our entire company has been around automation from that point, to today.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're ingesting 500 gigabytes a day of data. We've got 63 billion rows in our database. We've got, 200 million SKUs from thousands of different brands and $10 billion worth of transactions. And it really is a big data company that's grown into this AI world. And that's why I'm so excited about the future, because AI is, of course, red hot right now. We are pioneering a lot of things. I want to make a really exciting a point also is that we are now releasing some of the tools that look more similar to the original tools around inventory optimization. And this is where I have never set out to build an ads company. Our DNA is not in ads. It's about helping our businesses, helping these brands and sellers and entrepreneurs, big or small, be successful. And it's what are the levers that you can pull: ads, pricing, inventory, what channels should you sell on? So I feel very excited heading into 2024 having this conversation, because we're on the verge of actually coming full circle and creating that platform. And I think that's where we're going to see really a new step function in the company.
Yep. That's really exciting to talk about. I'm curious, we're kind of winding down the conversation at this point in time. And I feel like it's been really interesting to see that point the start of all this to where we are now. And there's so much more we could unpack, even just over the last year, to be honest, for the story, for your story, and for Teikametrics' story. But we talked about the aspect of certain problems not changing. Okay. And there are two questions here. One is for you as Alistair, and one is for sellers. Okay. You can speak to both because you interact with sellers every single day, and you were one of the first. For Alistair, what problems have not changed from seller to CEO? What problems have remained the same for you? And that same question for the sellers. As a seller, what problems as a seller have not changed from way back when in early 2000s all the way up to now? What do you think?
No, it's a great question. I mean, I think, let's start with the seller, who's our customer. I think the reality is it has not become any easier. If you think about the amount of money and the transaction sort of value. When I started, it was 15% goes to Amazon. Now it's 53% goes to Amazon. So what's important there is just the challenge of the relationship with a brand and its channels. And it's always, as a brand owner, how do you get to your customers? So, that's why Shopify, in parallel to this whole sort of Amazon world that I've been part of, has done incredibly well because it's allowed brands to have their own outlet. At the same time, one of the biggest questions is, well, how do I get more customers? If Amazon has 80% of US retail in Prime, then you have to be there as well, and you have to be on Walmart. So I think the challenges of how do I gain new customers and how do I grow really has been the same. And that's the same journey for me going through eBay, Yahoo Shops, Amazon, and there are all these other channels that I signed up to work on as well, like Sears Marketplace as an example, and who's ever heard of that as an example. So, I think that challenge is really about efficient growth. And if you're a brand, how complicated that is. And I would say it's becoming more complicated right now, which actually gives Teikametrics more opportunity to solve more complicated problems. TikTok shops, Walmart, Amazon, Shopify. These are all the channels that you need to be thinking about. And I'm really excited to fix those problems. We were focused on Amazon as the tip of the spear. We then became the first company to optimize with Walmart. And now we're talking about new things, and we're releasing optimization for TikTok shops as an example. So it's harder than ever before. To go to the CEO question, I think, it's less about a problem. It's more about, I think, being open-minded. And, if you think back, and it's a long time ago, and Amazon really wasn't who it is today, right? And really at that time, I guarantee that no one would have really heard of Jeff Bezos as an example. And it's hard to think in the moment about the evolution of a journey like that with a company like Amazon, because it just seems so in the moment dominant, but that didn't happen overnight. So I think for us, and my mission for this company is to help sellers maximize their potential and brand owners maximize their potential. So I'm thinking about, well, what is the next channel? What is the next innovation point? Where is the journey for the sellers? And we're looking at these new things. We've done really well with Walmart. I've been so fortunate to have conversations with the CEO of Walmart, as an example, be part of that Walmart growth story. We've helped a small amount with, who Walmart is today. And I think that's good because that's innovation for consumers, making the world more efficient. It's innovation for brands. And I think, some channels that are quite interesting, we don't know yet, but TikTok shops could be really interesting. Meta could be interesting. Google could be interesting. So I actually think when you look at the next 10 years, it's sort of similar to that journey that I had. Like, where does this go? And it really is never going to stop, right? I mean, what will be there from at least, I think into infinity is people wanting to buy stuff, right? This has been happening since ancient history. So I think it's exciting. I think it's a sort of limitless opportunity. The market is massive. There's no limits to the size of this market, because you're basically talking about where people sell stuff. And that's really the CEO question. Where is the best place to sell stuff? That's what I'm thinking about.
One last question. And I wish we could talk about more, because there are a whole lot of things that we could dive into, and we're going to have to do another episode not too far from now. What is next in terms of AI? I think this conversation around technology, AI is a huge stepping stone. I think that fact is still hitting people, that this is sticking around, it's here to stay, and I think level ups will come from AI. But what is next? Truly, 2023 was the year of AI in a lot of different ways. It wasn't the first year of AI, of course, but it really hit mainstream. So what is next for AI?
Yeah, I think it's still super early. I think we're already seeing some of these things that are entirely changing the game. So if you're a business owner or a business operator, I think you need to embrace it, whether that's, if you're a growing entrepreneur. And I think if you think about what are you able to do to get an advantage, I think you have to embrace AI in every facet, really. I think the advantages that someone may have had before, let's use a simple one. And I've been thinking about this recently, about, let's say the ability to write a really, really well-crafted email. Now you can do that. Let's say you're in sales. Let's say you can do that really quickly with ChatGPT. I mean, that's at a very small scale. So you've got to really think, who are you competing against in the market that's using those tools if you're not? And I think your competitive, how are you going to differentiate yourself, has to be something that you should be thinking about, no matter what industry you're in, no matter what area of business you're in. So I think that's more of a generic comment. I think in our category, in e-commerce, what I'm excited about is it is absolutely crucial, and we're driving, at our company, Teikametrics, tons of value from this, because it's just beyond human capability, right? The ability to get thousands of products, let's say if you're selling thousands of products across all the different channels, making better decisions, it's really applied AI. And I think that, the idea that people trust automation is great. I think, as an example, when we launched the first tool, Sponsored Product Optimizer, we did have a lot of people who tried the tool come back and say, I think I can do this manually better. Or, and it would always be a confusing sort of conversation for me, being close on the product and just saying, well, how is that possible? We're changing these bids and changing these keywords at a rate that's just beyond human capability. So I think this gives companies, I think business owners are really embracing it. So if you're running a startup, you're running a software company that is sort of AI first, you've got so much more momentum than you would have had 3 or 4 years ago. The real question, though, is what's your differentiation? Because everyone else is saying the same thing.
Yep.
And, we haven't had to change our website. We haven't had to change our branding that much, because we've been saying this for some time. But what's important for us is, what is really AI and its differentiation between our competitors, as an example. So I think a lot of my thinking is around competition, actually. It's about embracing new technologies. And I think the folks that are going to embrace them faster are going to be the ones that get ahead.
Which is a very tangible reality. If you're a seller and you're on Amazon and a competitor is leveraging AI to do certain functions, run ads, optimize keywords, and you're not, then it's kind of a fact that they just have more capacity to do certain things at a scale that you can't if you're not using AI, good tools that leverage AI to do those
That's
things.
Right. That's right. I mean, that's a great point. And, that's very much central to what we believe. And that's what our customers are seeing from us. And I'm really excited about that. I think one of the challenges is proving that these actions actually improve performance. And what would be the counterfactual, meaning if you didn't run this AI algorithm and you weren't using our tool or any other tool, what would have happened? And I think that's a sort of an interesting concept. What is the counterfactual?
There's much more to come. We're at time now. So long story short, the story of your origination from your dorm room, from selling things on the earliest version possible of Amazon, all the way up to CEO and founder of Teikametrics, software, AI. There's so much to unpack here, and there's more to come in the future. But Alistair, thank you so much for just sharing your story. It's really, 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 it just paints a really amazing picture of your journey and of the problems that you're solving, that Teikametrics is solving, and that the pain that people experience as sellers today. And it's interesting to look back and see the pain that they have always experienced, sellers have always experienced through this entire timeline. So, Alistair, thank you again. Looking forward to more conversations in the future.
Thank you so much, Cameron. Really appreciate it.
Thank you all for watching or listening to the very first episode of Human in the Loop. My name is Cameron. Just as a couple last bits of information here, if you're not following us on social media, you'll want to do so. What I'm going to do with each of these episodes is splice and dice the biggest, most impactful portions of these conversations and put them out on social media. So there's going to be a lot to unpack in every single one of these episodes. And I know short form content is a really big deal nowadays. So if you want some of the main pieces of these conversations, follow us on Instagram, follow us on TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever it is, wherever you are, there will be content that we're putting out from the show to follow you along the way. And these are the best nuggets of information, the best tidbits of information that are going to be on our social media. So follow us on social. Next week, we're walking through the most important metrics and data from 2023 from an advertiser's perspective with Laura Pattison. So keep an eye out for that. I'll see you next week.